Hello, welcome back, and good morning to yet another monotonous morning in my bed. Huzzah! Because I watched Catherine the Great like 2 weeks ago, and I cannot stop saying that. It's becoming a real concern. What did you say? A patient died? Well, huzzah to that. The plumbing burst? Huzzah! I'm about to go bankrupt? Huzzah! Everything in my life at the moment is huzzah. Sitting here today is not great for me. It's never great for me because I'm sitting in a bed with no spinal support, so I'm curved over like something that curves over? A porpoise. I'm curved over like a porpoise. But today, in particular, is really, really bad because I cut myself at work yesterday with a scalpel on my stomach. Don't ask me how. It was not intentional. It was not like a self-harm kind of thing. It's just blade in hand, all brain cells gone sort of thing, which is why I don't understand why people keep insisting on handing me blades. It ends this way every single time without failure. But people just keep doing it as if we're suddenly going to become friends. Me and blades are not going to become friends anytime in the foreseeable future. And it's not so much actually me and blades as much as it is blades and my impulse control. I have no impulse control when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, I have no impulse control full stop, but huzzah. For example, during the second war that I was involved in, it was very, very different from the first, in which we remained largely with our parents. Like, we were under a lot of parental control. That was not true for the second war that I was involved in. We were being marched from How to Hi-Ho. Like, we were not part of the in-group. We were very much part of the out-group. And so during one of these marches, the insert of my steel cap boot gets bunched up into the toe of it. And I can't fix it because, again, steel caps, not exactly flexible. I cannot get my hand down there. And we're being marched around. There's no one there to fix it for me. So what do I do in that situation? Well, I'll tell you what I do. In my infinite wisdom, I decide the best course of action, the best plan to put into motion in this circumstance was to take a single-edged blade, hold it by the sharp end, and use the butt of the blade to jam down into my boot in hopes of prying free the insert that is stuck in the toe. Because, I didn't want to have to risk cutting my shoe or anything, because that would have been a tragedy. I'll give you one guess of how that plan ended up turning out, and let me just give you a clue. It wasn't pretty, but still, not the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, not even the most idiotic thing I've ever done in my life, or said, for that matter of fact, or even to enter my brain. Oh, God. I can't believe I'm going to tell this story, to have it immortalized on the internet forevermore. When I first moved to Australia, the reason that I moved here in the first place is that they were going to ship me off to work at the Casey Station in Antarctica, the very aptly named Casey Station. But that plan fell through at the last moment, and so they had no idea what to actually do with me from that point forward. And there was a lot of hemming and harming because, again, they had no idea what they were going to do with me. And so in the interim of that, they stuck me up in an apartment in Melbourne and gave me a stipend and just kind of ghosted me for the better part of 2 years. But eventually somebody decides that I should be working a couple of days a week just to keep my clinical skills in check. Because at this point, the entire time that I've been here, I have been doing next to nothing. They sent me to Imperial College London to be certified, and then when they thought that they were going to send me to Antarctica, they sent me to the Antarctic Institute, which was in Hobart. That's it. That is the entirety of my medical skills that I was using, which at this point in time would have been like 4.5 years. That's it. So they're like, well, you need to be working because we've decided that you are going to stay in Australia. We're just trying to figure out where we're going to place you. So they organized for me to go meet with the staff at a major hospital here in Melbourne, which I'm not going to name the names of for reasons that will become apparent as the story progresses. Now, I had never been to a job interview in my entire life prior to this, but I was told very, very clearly that this was not a job interview. The job was already a done deal. This was just a formality. This was just me going there to meet with them so that I could know who they were and they could put a face to my name. It was supposed to be a very chill, very relaxed meeting. That was it. So I'm given a time and a place, and it's in one of those consulting hubs with multiple businesses inside. And I show up on time because if there's one thing to know about me, is that I'm punctual. If you tell me to go to a place at a specific time, I will move hell and high water to make sure that I am there at that time. I'm not going to leave you hanging. So I go to the offices that I have been directed to go to. Nobody has told me to knock. I have no reason to think that I need to knock. There is no context clues in this establishment that says that knocking is the norm. And so I just assume that when I get there, I go inside and there will be a receptionist, and I will tell the receptionist, "Hello, my name is Casey Escamilla and I have a 12:30 appointment with Dr. So-and-so, and I will be directed to Dr. So-and-so." Seems logical, right? No, not right. Wrong. So I was told to arrive at 12:30, and so I arrived at 12:30 on the dot. But apparently what somebody failed to mention to me was the very important fact that 12:30 on the dot just so happened to correlate with the lunch hour, the sacred lunch hour of the 3 witches of Eastwick who have crammed themselves into a closet-sized office, eating their katsu curry off a giant stack of medical files. And so, again, there is no context clues in this place, in this entire establishment, that I am supposed to knock before entering the office. So I just enter the office expecting to come face to face with a lovely receptionist, and instead I come face to face with the trio of doom who are glaring at me like I've just stumbled in on their sacred orgy or something. Like I'm the unprofessional one for showing up at the exact time that I've been told to show up at for this professional meeting, and for having the audacity to not be pre-briefed on the sacred door knocking ritual that would have prevented this catastrophic display of punctuality. So I am then frog marched, like literally took me by my arm and frog marched me back out into the hallway where they made me wait for 40 minutes while they finished their friggin' lunch. There are no chairs in this hallway. There are no benches. There is no receptionist. There is no sign. There is no flashing neon light telling me to knock first or face the wrath of the evil coven inside. No, I'm just standing out there in this hallway past my appointment time when clearly there is nobody inside. They're literally just sitting inside eating, and I'm just standing out there in the hallway like a chastised intern for daring to do exactly what I was told to do. But eventually one of them emerges and she glares at me like I am a feral cat before ushering me back into the sacred temple that is their office. Like I'm supposed to be honored to be able to grace them with my presence, like their holy presence in my life will change everything. Like, fuck off. And it only got worse from there, believe it or not. Now, just a reminder, I have never had a job interview in my life, and I have been told specifically that this is not a job interview. This is just a formality, a meet and greet where we shake hands and look each other in the eyes so that they can know that I'm a real boy. But the second that I sit down, like literally the second, not even like tell me about yourself. They didn't even go that softly. No, they were immediately diving off the deep end. They were asking me behavioral questions and vague corporate questions and questions about, empathy and building rapport and how do you deal with stress and what is your best management style. I don't know any of that stuff. Again, I have never been to a job interview in my life. And listen, I knew my clinical stuff. I was not an idiot. You cannot trick question me when it comes to medical stuff. I know my biology, I know all that stuff. But they weren't asking stuff like that. They were asking really weird, like, star questions. Like, how do you build empathy? I have no idea, okay? I had not prepared for this at all. I was a duck in high oceans. I had no way of, like, navigating myself in this environment. And you also have to keep in mind that English was not my first language. And my English wasn't bad, but I'd been largely alone, been ghosted and left to my own devices for the past 18 months, just reading books and watching reruns. And so the vast majority of my English had come from like House and Twin Peaks. I was basically the third Gilmore Girl. And so whenever I got tongue-tied, I just resorted back to talking in pop cultural references in hopes that people would understand what I was trying to say. And at this point, they say, our hospital has a large elderly patient population. How do you build rapport with elderly patients? And I go blank. I freeze. I'm like a rabbit in headlights. So I am stumped. I'm sitting there. I cannot find the words that I want to say to answer this question. Like, I know I can hear them in my head. I cannot find the English words for them. So I'm sitting there staring at them, and they're sitting there staring at me. And it is so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. And it's gotten to that point where the silence is very uncomfortable and very awkward. And I'm like, shit, I need to just say something. I need to just come up with an answer, because saying anything is better than saying nothing and sitting here for eternity just staring at these people. I will sit here and die in this place if I don't come up with the right words. And so the best thing that I can think to come up with in that moment is Old people are like wild animals. They can sense evil. And I am like the Snow White of old people. And you can quite literally feel the temperature in this room change. One of them starts like scribbling something down rapidly, and another one is just sitting there staring at me unblinkingly, wide-eyed, for literally about a minute. And then very mercifully, the entire interview abruptly ends and I'm free to go. Flash forward a couple of days and I get an email from them. And it's just a standard rejection email saying, it was lovely meeting with you, but we've decided to move forward with a different candidate, which was quite funny because this was not a standard open job application. This was a job specifically created for me. There are no other candidates. I am the only name on the list. So who is this other candidate that you're moving forward with? So in turn, I forwarded the email to my handlers, who in turn hit the motherfucking roof. And what followed on from that, I can only assume, was a series of very angry phone calls and even angrier meetings, because within the next week, I received a second email, which was essentially a written groveling apology saying, we are so sorry, we didn't mean that. We would love nothing more than for you to come and work with us, no hard feelings. Please, come and work for us. Come join us. We love you. We adore you and your rapport with the elderly and your woodland creature vibes. Which, in hindsight, the groveling apology was a bit much. But in hindsight, why wouldn't you want me to come and work for you? They weren't even going to have to pay me. I was essentially a free emergency room doctor that was completely at their disposal. But at that point, my handlers had decided that they didn't actually want me going anywhere near that hospital again. So they ended up sending me to a children's hospital, which I wasn't really happy about at the time, but it ended up being a good experience because I'm not a pediatric doctor. I've never had any interest in pediatrics, but I ended up going there. The hospital wasn't really given any choice, so I didn't have to interview for it. My handlers just said, well, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. And if you don't like it, well, too damn bad. Take it to the top because this is what's happening. Get over it. And yeah, so I ended up working in pediatrics for a few months in the emergency room there, which was a really good experience because, like I said, it's not an area of medicine that I ever was interested in. I'm still not interested in it. I would never actually go into pediatrics, but the hospital was beautiful. I love that hospital. The people that I worked with were amazing. My manager, who was in charge of me, he was incredible. He was so soft-spoken, and he was 70 years old, but he was so nice. He was literally one of the nicest doctors that I've ever worked with. It was a good experience. Anyway, I need to go clean my house. I feel like I should be labeling these videos that I do Casey's Dirty Sloot Diaries in the most literal sense of the word, because I feel like all I do is just show you my mess. However, I worked 83 hours this week, and so my house is a complete and total sty right now. And I need to be a responsible adult. And instead of going outside and having fun with my friends in the sun, I'm going to clean up my house. And I'm not going to show you a time lapse, even though I find them incredibly satisfying personally. But I know for the vast majority of people, you've seen one, you've seen them all. You do not need to see me clean my house. And so instead, I'm just going to do a very elegant and classy and dignified transition. So onwards and upwards. You're welcome. Huzzah! It's done. Or at least it is as done as it's going to get on this beautiful early spring. What is it? It's a Monday. For some reason, I think it's a Sunday. But it is done as much as it's going to be on this beautiful spring Monday. Hello again. I am facing the camera once more in my nicely vacuumed, mopped, fresh bench tops, fresh tabletops house that I have just finished cleaning, and I've got candles burning in the background, which smell delicious. I've got a candy cane flavored one and a birthday cake flavored one, which makes a mint cake flavored candle put together. 2 + 2 = 4. What do you want me to say? Anyway, I am going to go get ready. I am going to Ash's house for dinner tonight. He has cooked us a roast lamb for dinner, and unfortunately I can't take you with me for that because none of my friends want to be on camera, but it will be a good night, I think. It'll be a good time. It's going to be me, there's going to be Ash, there's going to be Nate, of course, because wherever I go, Nate comes along too. Michelle might or might not show up, depending on crime in the area, I guess. That's her job, dealing with crime. And then Ash's new boyfriend, David, is going to be there, who seems very nice, but I am the ultimate evil boy mum when it comes to Ash. Nobody is good enough for my Ash, not even David. And so we will see. I will try not to bully him too much. However, that's not what I want to discuss right now. What I want to discuss is, if you weren't aware, if you've never watched my videos before, I am currently in the middle of a research project that is around interspecies communication, specifically between humans and orcas. And at the moment, I am balls deep, I guess you could say, in the language development of orca calves, specifically how they come up with how they learn their own vocalizations, because it's a very similar process to humans and babies learning how to speak. And as I was looking into that this week, I came up with a new hypothesis, which I think would be incredibly interesting to research, but unfortunately I don't have the time or the energy to do it myself. And so I'm going to throw this out into the world in hope that someone else will pick it up and find it interesting and want to do the research themselves, because I would love to read this research. It is about men's social behavior, men's social development, and their relationships with their mothers, because as I was doing my orca research, something clicked. And so I'm going to tell you what it is. Okay, I'm sitting here because I've got notes that I want to refer to, because I've taken a lot of notes over the past week, and I want to get this done right, because like I said, I would really love to read the research if someone wants to pick this up. I'm not going to turn on the ring lights. It's just, this is not the scene for it. I'm blocking the worst of the light, so at least that's not glaring in your eyes, but you're just going to have to cope with it for the moment. We'll turn it on later if we're here at night. Anyway, to get to the point that I'm trying to actually say, the bait of knowledge that I'm throwing out into the world in hopes that someone will, fish it in and do the heavy lifting of the research so I don't have to do it, but I can get the pleasure of having read it. In most intelligent animal species, so highly intelligent animals who share our high levels of neurocortical neurons, so orcas, obviously, and elephants and dolphins and most primate species. Those animals the males of the species, they never leave their mother's side ever. They remain with their mothers from birth until death, either her death or his death. And if the mother dies before the son doesn't usually live much longer after she's gone. And this is not just a comfort thing. There is a very sophisticated survival strategy behind this behavior. So, in animal species, besides humans, it's typically the mother who knows how to find food, who knows how to avoid danger, and who knows how to fit into a group dynamic. And so by staying close to the mother, the son typically is calmer, he's safer, and he learns how to integrate himself into a group culture at a much higher and effective rate than if he had no mother figure at all. So humans are unique in this dynamic in that the male of the species leaves his mother and forms his own household at a very, very young age. Now, this likely came about as a result of farming and land ownership and inheritance rights, which made independence highly valuable. So to replace the stabilizing role of the mother, human societies created new structures. We created tribes and militaries and fraternities and patriarchies, all so that the male of the species could find a sense of belonging and purpose outside of their neonatal families. Because again, this is highly, highly unusual. The only other highly intelligent species that you see this kind of behavior in is gorillas. And that's not a natural thing either. That's usually the result of a hormonal issue where the silverback gorillas get so testosterone filled that it's no longer safe for them to be around their neonatal family, that they get evicted from it, essentially. My hypothesis is this. When a species has a big, beautiful, complex brain, the male of the species remains by the mother's side because they require lifelong guidance and cultural stability. Humans have broken this pattern, and that has shaped why human males, on average, are more competitive, risk-taking, and volatile than the males of other intelligent species. Anyway, that was just something that I've been thinking about this week while I was, deep into my orca research. And it's just a question that came up. So if you are a research student in neuroscience or psychology or psychiatry, anything like that, if you want to take this research question and run with it, I would be so happy. I would be so happy. I want to read the research into this so much. I just don't have the time to do it myself. So I am back from dinner. Dinner was beautiful. Thank you for asking. David, I still don't like you. You were still not good enough, Rash, but that's not actually your fault because, like I said, nobody on the face of this planet is good enough for Rash because he is a perfect person. He is a literal saint who has never done anything bad in his entire life, and he deserves somebody non-human, which David is not. David is very much human, unfortunately. I learned that today because he has allergies. So there's that. I also got a present. Nate brought me some soap, which you might think is a weird present, but he went to the regional city, the closest regional city, and they had a TK Maxx. And I have been complaining for the last month that I've run out of my good soap, and I've been having to use this other soap that I brought at the same time that I brought because it smelled identical to my favorite hand sanitizer. And then after I used it like 3 or 4 times, I hated it and I never wanted to touch it again, but I've just been reduced to using that. So now I get to move on to this hand soap, which I haven't actually smelt. It is apple and bubblegum flavored. So that will be nice, I think. I will have to smell that soon. But it's Halloween themed, and I don't actually celebrate Halloween because it's not in my culture. In my culture, we have a 3-day holiday. So we have All Saints Day followed by All Souls Day, and then we just get another day off. But I enjoy Halloween. I think it's a good holiday, and I'm happy that I get to celebrate it now. And speaking of Halloween, like I said earlier, I worked 83 hours this week, which sounds like a lot, and it objectively is a lot of hours to be working. However, like I've said a million times before, the hospital that I work in is in the literal arse end of nowhere. So we're not busy in the same way that an urban hospital might be busy. So instead of seeing, 2,000 patients an hour, we might see 2,000 patients in an entire day. So there are very long stretches of time in which things are very, very quiet for us, and we need ways to fill in that time. We need to find ways to keep ourselves entertained during those long stretches of time in which we have no patients, which is sometimes very easy to do and sometimes much more harder. For example, when I'm there alone, I like to read books, which is why I have just piles and piles of books all over my house, just like hidden stashes, like I'm a drug addict, but for pages. And then behind the reception desk for really quiet nights, we've also got an old Nintendo 64 set up on one of those old box TVs. So, we have activities. We take steps to keep ourselves entertained. But this week's unique activity, because we tend to do a unique activity every single week, and then we get bored and we move on to a new one. But this week's unique activity is that Nate and I, we went deep, deep, deep down the rabbit hole of witch talk. Now, if you don't know what witch talk is, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's witches on TikTok. And let me just say, and I'm going to say this with my full heart, okay? My full spirit in this statement. I know that a lot of you think that I am in spiritual psychosis, but these witches, they are unquestionably in spiritual psychosis. That is my medical opinion, okay? My medical informed opinion that a good chunk of them actually need psychological evaluation for psychosis. They need medication. There was this one witch on TikTok who, in all earnestness, sat there and made a video saying that she was doing spiritual work. She was connecting with her elders because that she was learning Italian on Duolingo, and she came from an Italian background, and she swore up and down that her ancestors were trying to communicate with her via Duolingo. But Nate now will not stop quoting witch talk to me in the most serious moments, like professional moments. I tried to inform him the other day that one of our patients was planning to put in a complaint about him, and he just sat there and quoted word for word a complete monologue from a witch talk video.
He can try, but it will just bounce back on him tenfold, because what he fails to realize in this world is that some bloodlines are more spiritually connected than others, and my bloodline just so happens to be the most spiritually protected of them all. So any evil that he casts upon me will only come back on him, because he does not realize who he's messing with.
Worse than the time the owner of our clinic forced him to do Maram training and he came back weaponizing therapy talk. And also, that is not a word-for-word direct quote from the video, because I cannot find the video. For the life of me, I cannot find it, even though I am 99% sure that I saved the video in my likes, which could possibly mean that the user has blocked me, which is very, very strange and also indicative of how unhinged these people are, because I've never interacted with this person in my life. I just liked a couple of his videos for my own personal enjoyment, and then he went and blocked me. So that should tell you everything that you need to know about the caliber of mentality that we're dealing with here. I also feel like I need to point out, because some people lack context clues, I'm not talking about every single person who has ever dared to post under the witch talk tag. Like, some of them I find genuinely very fascinating to watch and listen to talk. Like, for example, what's his name? Afro_spiritual. I find him to be incredibly authentic, and I enjoy listening to him talk because he doesn't come across as a caricature, which is a big problem in the witch talk community. They all seem to be very, very fake. He doesn't come across as fake. He comes across as very genuine. He comes across as very passionate, and he comes across as very educational and grounded in what he's doing. He doesn't treat it like, oh, if I piss in a jar tonight, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to look under my pillow like the Tooth Fairy's been, except for instead of a gold coin, it's going to be $10 billion. That's just for me. He doesn't come across as that. He comes across someone who is very grounded in his spiritual work. He views this as his religious path, and he's very keen on educating people on that, which I find fascinating. Anyway, I find people unpacking their religions something that I enjoy listening to in everyday life. So learning about hoodoo, which is something that does not exist where I come from, is a journey that I'm very happy that I'm able to undertake with him. But also, I want to point out, that's just with him. Just because people are talking about hoodoo does not make them any more grounded than the neo-pagans on that tag. I think the reason why I personally find this so entertaining and so fascinating is that the religion that I grew up in and these neo-pagan religion, I'm using that in the loosest possible sense of the word, but the religion that I grew up in these neo-pagan religions, they have a significant level of aesthetic overlap, at least on a surface level. So my religion is a cosmic-based religion in which we worship the moon, the sun, and the stars, overseen by an ultimate creator. So naturally, just via being that, there is a significant level of space imagery involved in that, as there is in neo-paganism. Celestial reverence and ritual cycles, but that is where the similarities stop. The underlying logic is inverted. Neo-paganism makes the metaphor the mechanism, or the religion that I grew up in recognizes physics as the mechanism and makes ritual purely meaning. It's not just sun and moon reverence because it looks pretty. It is a direct cultural correction to trauma in which we remember, and to be honest, mythologize a little bit, a time in which humans lived out of alignment with the rest of the world and paid the price for it. Neo-paganism today looks backwards, trying to revive and reinvent symbolic systems from antiquity. Whereas the religion that I grew up in, despite aesthetically resembling paganism, is about moving forward. It's not about trying to reconstruct lost myth. It's about trying to prevent further societal collapse. It worships the moon, sun, and stars not as fertility symbols, but as the eternal order that humanity ignored. The celestial cycles kept ticking even when humanity failed. And so it might resemble paganism in that it has, rituals under the moon and celestial festivals, but at its core, it is a radically different ideology. It's not the moon empowers us, it is the moon outlasted us, and we must never forget that. Paganism, on the other hand, whether it be ancient or neo, is about metaphor and symbolic power. The sun as a goddess, the moon as fertility, the stars as fate, blah, 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 blah. It's basically just a giant cosmic vending machine, and that is what I struggle to wrap my head around. Because where I come from, what you perceive to be magic is not myth, it's not metaphor, it's just the continuation of physics research and applied science, just on a deeper foundation than you currently have. Where you're kind of stuck at quantum field theory and particle accelerators, we've got a neurological and biological basis. Basically, in layman's terms, if you are currently really, really bad at maths and science, then you're going to be terrible at magic. For the exact same reason, you're going to be bad at navigation if you can't read a map. Because at its core, magic is just energy manipulation. And energy isn't symbolic. It doesn't care about what color candle you used or whether you invoked the name of the correct god or not. It just is. That means in order for you to shift it and shape it and direct it, you have to have a solid foundational understanding of how energy moves and how it reacts and what constraints it operates under. Which also means that you need to have a very strong foundational understanding of things like numbers and balances and relationships and cause and effect. If you can't follow equations, if you can't keep track of ratios, if you don't understand the logic of systems, then the thing in front of you is as opaque as foreign script. I mean, you can absolutely still light your little candles and wave your hands around and invoke the names of the gods, as long as you understand that you're not actually doing anything more than that. Whereas somebody who is fluent in the language of energy, which is of course mathematics and science, can take that same raw force and bend it predictably and elegantly and without waste. Because the sad reality is, which I know is quite heartbreaking for a lot of people because your cultures do not put enough emphasis on science and math, but without that fluency, you're basically just fumbling around in the dark. That's why weakness in maths and science translates to weakness in magic, not because it's elitist, not because your symbols aren't beautiful, they absolutely are. As I said, aesthetically speaking, they resemble my religious symbols a lot. And so if I think mine is beautiful, naturally yours is beautiful too. And I think paganism could be a very strong tool, socially speaking, which is a different video that I will get into one day, just not tonight. Tonight, I'm talking about reality and the rules of reality and having to understand that. Because if you don't understand the rules of reality, you can't play the game. I know these people on Witch Talk are bad at math and science for one reason and one reason only. The fucking herbs. You may note that I have herbs in my house too. I keep bay leaves by my rubbish bin. I keep herb and vinegar mixes in my cupboards. This is not magic, okay? This is science. I'm not influencing mythical forces on the universe. I'm influencing biology and behavior. Specifically speaking, I am trying to keep rodents away from my bins, and I'm trying to keep spiders out of my clean towels. And when I put salt down at my front door, I'm not warding off the boogeyman. I am just trying to keep ants and snails and insects from coming into my house and eating my food, which I can take you around my house right now. I do not have a single insect in my house because I do these kind of things, which is saying something because I live in the outback and we have insects. Like, we are not in the bug apocalypse that the rest of the world claims to be in. We have insects galore everywhere you look. We are currently going into that time of the year where everywhere you look, there are giant, enormous dragonflies coming out of hiding to attack everyone. Like, they're not attacking everyone, but you will get hit in the face by them. You cannot drive down the street without leaving a trail of gruesome dragonfly corpses behind you. It's not nice, but it's also very nice because they're beautiful to look at. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that the bay leaf in my wall over there does not scare off the mice because it wards against evil. No, it scares off the mice because rodents dislike the volatile oils that bay leaves release. It might look like magic if you think in symbols, but it's really just applied science, the same as burning sage or hanging up garlic cloves. People in the past called these things magic because they weren't stupid. They recognized the cause and effect of these things, but they lacked the scientific language to accurately describe it. And so if you live in a society that does not have biology and chemistry, you don't say things like the volatile oils and a bay leaf disrupt rodent behavior. You say things instead like, bay leaves have protective properties. It's the exact same idea, it's just framed differently. The problem with neo-paganism is that it keeps the symbolic framing, even though we now have the accurate scientific language to describe exactly what they were trying to communicate with it. For example, well, it's not an example, but the point I'm trying to make is that they take what was once a practical life hack wrapped up in metaphor because they had no other language to describe what they were trying to say, and it disregards the life hack and instead amplifies the metaphor as if the metaphor itself is the mechanism. It's like insisting that thunder and lightning is Thor's hammer, even knowing we now have discovered electricity and atmospheric changes. There is no connotation between religion and magic. There just isn't. There's not. They're completely separate entities. Like, I talk about A all the time. Look at A. He comes from a completely secular background. There is no religion in his country at all. And not to mention, I think that he would genuinely struggle to distinguish between, like, rosemary and thyme, let alone between, like, moonstone and clear quartz. But he has so much energy. His brain is food. It is. His proteins are so fucking misfolded, it's not even funny. Not because of any mysticism or religious aspect, but because his brain literally runs hotter and faster and in a more conducive pattern. It's like an athlete whose muscles are more dense, or whose wingspan is larger, or whose lungs can hold more oxygen. It's the exact same thing. It's not religious. It's not magical. It is literally biological. It is neuroscience. It is physics. that is it. Anyway, like I said, I think neo-paganism has its roots, at least modern, where it is right now. I think it has a lot more to do with community and its cosplaying as a religion more than anything else. But that is a video for a different day. That is not a video for today because it is 10:30 at night and I need to edit this and I want to go to bed. I've got to go out for lunch tomorrow with Ash. It's going to be a nice day. And so, as always, this is Casey signing off for the night. Stay safe out there, stay weird, and stay off Witch Talk. It is a dangerous, weird, funny little place.